athletic footwear. And by Budweiser, proud sponsor of the Ironman Qualifier Series and the Ironman Canada Triathlon Championship. If there has been a more spectacular setting for a triathlon, I have not seen it. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Royal LePage Whistler Triathlon. I'm Michael Landsberg. But the beauty of this triathlon, I think, goes far more than skin deep. Besides being a spectacular, awesome setting, this has the potential to be an outstanding competition. We welcome our color commentator, as always, triathlon expert Graham Fraser. Great test for the Canadians to see how good they are.
Well, we've got the top Canadians in the field. We've got Paul White, Frank Clark, and Simon Cassidy. Those guys are getting up to that international status. 3 years ago, they couldn't have raced the Brad, Bevan, Greg Welch, and Mike Piggs of the world. But we're going to see an interesting story today because we're going to see if they really are at that level, or if, you know, the Canadians' times are coming up, but when they compete against these guys, it's not the same. So it's going to be really, really interesting today.
One of the things that makes it so interesting is that you've got three athletes who excel in their pursuits. For instance, Richard Welch is the best swimmer. He swam competitively for New Zealand at the Commonwealth Games.
You know, an ideal swim would be something with a 10-minute lead, but realistically, you know, I'll be happy with a minute. So we'll just take it from there.
American Mike Pigg is the top cyclist, and he knows if he's going to win today's race, it must be on the cycle portion.
I like to pass him really in the cycle. 6 miles, I want to lead the race at 6 miles, and I want to get out of sight. Because when I can do that, I make good time. They forget, you know, what I'm doing, and they start concentrating on their own race. And I make some good distance when that happens.
Australia's Greg Welch is an outstanding runner, and his plan is to make his move on the run.
Yeah, I'd like to be just about a minute behind off the bike, or a little bit less, and I feel good about the run. So it's a hard run, so I hope to be up there.
New Zealander, an American, and Australian all looking at the men's title, along with some great Canadians. Let's talk about the women's division, though.
Today's field will sort of feature the Canadian stars. We've got the international people like Sylviane and Puntous, got Terri-Smith-Ross, Kendall Morrison, Sue Schlatter, and they've been following the Royal LePage Canadian circuit. They're who we're watching today.
And here's where we'll watch them to start with. It's Lost Lake, and like Lost Lake would suggest, it appears out of nowhere at the base of Whistler in the woods. Here's where they'll swim. They want to go 1.5 kilometers, but because the lake isn't big enough for that, they swim around the perimeter once, then they make a loop in the middle to round out 1.5 kilometer swim.
It's what we'd call a UC course, where you do the U on the outside, the C in the middle, and you end up back on the beach.
Well, let's see now who gets the best start. Interestingly, in this one, the men and women start together.
Definite advantage to the women because they can sort of be towed behind the pro men, which usually they don't have that advantage in most races.
Well, we'll find out now which of the pro men is doing the towing and which of the pro men and women are being towed when we return to beautiful Lost Lake. This is the Royal LePage Whistler Triathlon. Stay with us.
Out of the pack, head for the clean, crisp, ice-cold taste that says genuine Bud. And from one Bud man to another, this Bud's for you.
The program scheduled at this time will not be seen. In its place, we bring you the premiere presentation of the Royal LePage Whistler Triathlon, next on TSN.
And right away, the Commonwealth Games swimmer Richard Welch has a lead, but it's not a very big lead.
No, it's not a big lead, and what you can see, you'll see that turn there? That was sort of like to see where the other guys were. He didn't do that sort of for speed, but just to see if there was guys drafting him.
May have also done it to see the beautiful scenery. What a great setting this is. Lost Lake, just at the base of Whistler, BC. We're watching the about midway through the swim, and there is the lead woman. It's a bit of a surprise. It's Tracy Mitchell out in front.
Yeah, Tracy's from British Columbia, and she's a darn good swimmer, but, you know, her biking and running need a little work, so I don't know if she's going to be a factor the whole way. But she's out there probably pulling away from the other girls, and some of them are going to try and catch up to her to get the tow.
Tracy Backman was up as well, Genevieve Carroll, and I gather from what you're saying that these local girls probably won't compete that well in the cycle and in the run. Back to the men now. Richard Welch hammering away, but look at Brad Bevan matching him stroke for stroke, almost choreographed there.
It's a bit of surprise because Richard usually pulls away early and tries to get the big jump so nobody can go with him. I think what Brad's doing here is making a bit of a mistake because he shouldn't be beside him. He should be in behind him. That's where you get that sort of draft effect, and he's missing that by being beside him.
Now, as we look at the lead woman, and in fact the lead pack of women, the thing that strikes me is that they aren't wearing wetsuits.
The water temperature is 73 today, and in the rules that says you don't wear wetsuits. That really changes the complexity of the race because wetsuits are a buoyancy thing, and which adds speed. The non-swimmers, they lose that buoyancy effect, and that changes the whole thing because the swimmers, the real swimmers, get the big lead.
And here come the men at the end of the swim leg, and they are about 5 abreast, so it's difficult to see who is going to touch down first. What a great battle this was. Richard Wells hoped to lead by a minute, but he doesn't lead at all. It's Brad Bevan first out of the water.
Yeah, that's a bit of a surprise because Richard is the predominant swimmer, and, you know, you would never expect that.
We can assume that Richard Wells likely won't win this race. He said he needed about a minute lead, and he didn't get it. And there's American Mike Pigg. Good performance in the water.
He had a great swim, and I think that probably had a lot to do with the fact it was a very technical course.
So after the swim, it looks like this. Bevan in 2019, a fast time, 1 second ahead of Wells. Eric Milamaki, a Canadian, 4 seconds back. Then Dave Kirk and Jason Harper, swim specialists, 7 and 15 seconds back. Okay, with the women, Tracy Mitchell is already out and on the course. That's Paige Backman waiting to go on the course now.
Yeah, Paige is a strong swimmer from Manitoba. She's a junior, and she's got a little work to do in her bike and run, but I think, you know, when that comes around, she could be a real good triathlete.
So the women are on the 1K run to the cycle area where they pick up their bikes. So Tracy Mitchell has a nice lead of 45 seconds, but she's a swim specialist, as is Paige Backman. And in fact, all of the top 5 are better swimmers than anything else, and this certainly won't be reflected in the final leaderboard, I don't think. So the men went the 1K to pick up their bikes, and what a 1K it must have been for Brad Bevan, who led by 1 second out of the water, but has a nice lead now.
Brad knew he had to get that lead because when Mike Pigg's behind you coming up in the bike, you got to get out ahead of him because if you can't stay with him on the run, you're not going to see him for the rest of the bike course.
So Bevan starts the cycle with the nice lead. Richard Wells has fallen off. Let's see Mike Pigg now, the bike specialist, and describe to me why he's such a good biker. Do you like his position?
Well, I think they all have the good positioning, but the power in the legs. And I think that's where Mike puts his extra training because he knows that's where his race is made or lost. So that's where he emphasizes his whole training program.
Well, he did very well to stay close in the swim, and he said that he wanted to be close and then win it on the cycle, which he seems to be right on track to do. Mike Pigg in second spot right now.
Brad Bevan knows that Mike's coming up behind him, and what he's trying to do is sort of stay in front enough that when they get off the bikes, he can still be in focus so that he can run near him.
Well, something must have happened on that 1K run because the leader now is JoAnne Ritchie.
JoAnne passed a lot of those sort of tier 2 women that we were talking about, and now she's trying to get ahead of the girls who are the better runners. JoAnne's not a real strong runner, so she's really got to have a hammer bike ride.
And we haven't seen a lot of JoAnne Ritchie this year, have we?
No, she hasn't raced a lot. She's a mother of 3, and she's sort of got, you know, a lot of things in her mind and in her time.
Well, let's catch up to Brad Bevan, who's now being pursued by Mike Pigg, and get Bevan's impressions of Whistler, British Columbia.
What's the climbing like?
Pretty long. Not like this in Australia, where I come from. This place is beautiful.
Isn't that gorgeous?
Sure is. Never seen snow.
Now that's impressive. Going uphill, leading the triathlon, he can still talk to us.
Tough enough to understand the Aussies anyways, let alone going uphill out of breath. That's Todd Clark from Vancouver. He's a real good swimmer, and he's really worked on his biking this year, so he may hang in there for this race.
So Todd Clark currently is in 3rd spot behind Brad Bevan and Mike Pigg, and that is Richard Wells, who had bike problems. He has fallen to 4th, and he is in big trouble.
Yeah, Richard should be up a little higher than that. I hear he's had some problems with his bike pump that fell into spokes and stuff and put him back a bit.
Okay, let's go to the women now, and JoAnne Ritchie tucked nicely behind her handlebars is in good position.
You can see she's really concentrating, and that's a real focused triathlete when they do that.
And Gail Lawrence is focusing pretty well right now. She's in 2nd.
Gail's from California. The other girls really don't know a lot about her, so they really don't know what to expect from her.
And we expect that maybe she won't be up there as the race continues, but here's Terri-Smith-Ross doing very well in 3rd.
Yeah, Terry's really raced well this year. She won Vancouver last week, and she's really racing on the circuit well.
And there is Sylviane Puntous, one of the favorites. She has moved up to 4th, and clearly she is moving up in this race.
She's getting in position for the run. Her strength's the run. If she gets off the bike within 30 seconds, she's going to be okay.
Well, here comes Mike Pigg storming up on Brad Bevan. Bevan glances a little bit over his shoulder now, and he sees Mike Pigg, the best biker. Let's see if there's any reaction between Mike Pigg and Brad Bevan.
No, there doesn't seem to be a lot. What Mike's doing is going by at such a pace that it's psych to Brad that he's not going to stay with him, and he's trying to get so far ahead. That's what Mike's game plan is, that when he gets off on the run, Brad doesn't know how far ahead he is.
Well, we heard him in our opening. He said he wanted to get out of sight, and he's very close to doing that right now. JoAnne Ritchie is out of sight still of a lot of the women. She has a nice lead right now.
JoAnne's heading back into town. You can see she's sort of going up the hills there. When you're going into the transition, sometimes you don't want to hurt yourself in your legs a lot because you're going to get into the run and you don't want to have tight legs.
Okay, here's a look at Mike Pigg as he hammers away and very much close to being out of sight. Pigg came out of the water well back. He glances back and he does not see a very close Brad Bevan right now.
No, he's got a very comfortable lead, but these Aussies can really run, and he really needs that lead.
There's a look at the next pack of men, including Canadian Simon Cassidy, as they all chase Brad Bevan, who is now chasing this man, Mike Pigg.
Yeah, Mike's just, almost into the transition area. And again, like I said before with the women, he doesn't want to kill his legs right now because it's a very hilly run course, and he knows that he's got a little more weight in his body than some of the other ones that he's got to carry up and down there.
Get a good feel there for the speed that Mike Pigg is traveling. How fast would he be going on flat ground right there?
On the flat ground, he'd probably be pushing about 30 miles an hour.
And he's been pushing it all the way through the cycle. An outstanding performance by Mike Pigg, who now leads this race and very close to completing his task, which was to get out of sight.
Yeah, I think he's well out of sight now. I think the key thing is right now is for guys like Greg Welch in the back to get way up there. And there's Brad Bevan, and he's sort of, trying to keep that distance so he's not too far behind, because if he falls more than 2-3 minutes behind when he gets into the transition, he's not going to catch a Mike Pigg on the run, because these guys all are within that sort of marginal thing where the leads don't change a lot.
And here is Mike Pigg coming into the second transition area as he hops off the bike and puts on the shoes.
And you notice how he's got his shoes on running there. It's a gravel thing there. A lot of times they pop their feet out, but Mike's smart enough to know that he's got to keep the shoes on. So the key thing for him right now is not to blow that lead he built up in the transition, because a lot of guys, if they don't practice their transitions and do them properly, they can lose 30 seconds, and sometimes that's the difference between winning and losing.
Okay, he didn't do up his shoes. He just pulled a little strap there.
Yeah, that's a time-saving device. It's just sort of a little pull thing. And again, these guys have got everything down to a science.
So like Superman, he's in and out real fast. Mike Pigg passed Brad Bevan on the cycle, and he is the leader by 53 seconds. What a great ride he had. Mark Bates is third. Greg Welch, a fine runner, is fourth. He'll make up some ground. And Canadian Todd Clark is in fifth spot, but he has a lot of ground to make up, 2.5 minutes. That's the way things look with the men after the cycle. Now the women come into the transition area, and JoAnne Ritchie has a good lead.
JoAnne's had a real good bike ride. Key thing for her right now is to have a real good transition, because with the 9K run coming up, you don't want to lose those valuable seconds with those real good runners behind you. Now look, she's got her shoes off there. She's running on the gravel. You can see how slow she's going compared to Mike Pigg when he ran in with his shoes.
You could see her almost like she's walking on hot coals, grimacing with every stride.
No, she doesn't look real comfortable there. Now she's got to put her shoes on, and if she's in pain, that's going to affect her. And look, she's having a sloppy transition getting her shoes on.
Now, what's interesting is if she's got stones on the bottom of her feet, that could really hurt during the 9K run.
Yeah, and especially pounding on those hills, that could add up. I hope she cleans her feet off before that, or she could be in a lot of pain.
She's losing some time. Sue Schlatter and a number of others are into the transition area as well, so JoAnne Ritchie did not have quite the same transition she had as she came out of the water. She is off onto the run. And let's take a look at the women's standings after the 40K cycle. Yes, JoAnne Ritchie has the lead, but it's not that good a lead. 13 seconds over Kendall Morrison. Terri-Smith-Ross is third. Sylviane Puntous hovering 24 seconds back, and then Gail Lawrence. That's the women after the cycle.
Sylviane's only 24 seconds behind. I think she's going to really like that position.
I like the position we're in, which is right here as we look at the skiers on Blackcomb Mountain. Yes, during the summer you can do it all. You can bike, you can swim, you can run, and you can ski. And we'll see who does the best running when we return to the Royal LePage Triathlon. We'll see the completion of the men's and women's right after this.
This is the pump. This is the interesting pump. It works right here. It have a little ball on the front, and you just like pump it up. You pump the tongue, and it has an air bladder inside that compresses the air in the shoe.
You can put it up to the level, where you want it.
That's good when you're playing basketball, You need comfort. So.
Give me that.
And when you want to release it, it's a button on the back. And you push it. And it releases the air. Ooh, where do you get these? You must be bad or something. Pump it up.
Daddy?
Yes, dear.
Is there cholesterol in these French fries?
Is there what?
Cholesterol.
Oh, you mean cholesterol?
Well?
No, honey. These are McCain super fries. They're cholesterol-free. Want some?
Daddy?
Yes, dear.
I'm glad we had this little chat.
Great tasting McCain French fries from the oven. Cholesterol-free for the whole family.
Look at the Canadian helicopter like the one we're shooting from today and getting some spectacular shots of the Whistler Triathlon from Whistler, BC. The men are into the run. There's Mike Pigg and no sign at all of Brad Bevan.
No, we can't see Brad anywhere. What Mike's trying to do right now is to break into a normal stride where he sort of has a long stride. It's really tough to do at Whistler because there's a lot of ups and downs.
Now, the up and down portion of this course, who do you think it would favor of the top runners?
I think, you know, Greg Welch, who's in behind, is the guy who's going to benefit the most because he's just a little guy and doesn't have to carry a lot of weight up the hills. These guys are fairly big triathletes, and it could affect them.
Now, this is interesting. The top woman right now is JoAnne Ritchie. She's also the biggest woman, so that might be a disadvantage.
Disadvantage depending on what type of runner he is. Sometimes big runners are powerful runners. Sometimes the hills can also be a benefit. So, you know, it's a no-win depending who you are.
Well, there's a whole posse chasing her. That's Sylviane Puntous, Terri-Smith-Ross, and Kendall Morrison, all trying to chase down JoAnne Ritchie.
Now, this can be a big advantage to Sylviane. She's the one we expect to sort of take the lead eventually. She's got the other girls pushing her from behind, which I think is a real motivational factor.
Drafting obviously isn't a factor here, but yes, there is the emotional push, and there is Mike Pigg, and he can't rely on anyone but himself. He is all alone and hammering this course.
And I think that's what Mike likes. Mike's a very focused person. You know, it's sort of just think ahead, think to the finish line, and keep that even stride.
And great look at Whistler, British Columbia, and some of the spectacular scenery as we look at Brad Bevan running down one of the many hills.
You can see sort of the pressure that the body takes when you're running down these hills. These guys are running. Right now, he's probably pushing about a 4.5-minute pace down that hill, and there's some tremendous pressure on your body.
While the men are spread out, the women are not. Look at this race. JoAnne Ritchie with a slight lead now over Sylviane Puntous.
Yeah, Sylviane, you can also see the other girls in behind. Now look at Sylviane. She's going to try and pass her here. This is a tactic a lot of triathletes like to use. They don't know they're coming up from behind, and the aid station could be a key spot.
I think she caught her by surprise. I saw JoAnne Ritchie just with a quick glance. I don't think she knew that Sylviane was that close.
I don't think she knew either. And it was a downhill, which is a very good spot to pass if someone doesn't know you're there because you can carry that speed through.
And she did, but look at JoAnne Ritchie hanging right with her. This has got to be a key point for JoAnne to keep it close.
Yeah, I think JoAnne's got to stay with her for the, you know, as much as she can because there's also other girls in behind and she doesn't want to drop 3 or 4 spots. She wants to at least make sure that she finishes second.
And she is doing just that as they go down the hill. Sylviane Puntous with a slight lead. As we come uphill, Mike Pigg continues to have a big lead, and yes, he looked back, and I think he knows at this point he's going to win the race.
Yeah, but he could be laboring a bit, too. Could be another sign when you start looking back, you know, how far are these guys behind me? I'm feeling some pain. I hope they're still behind me.
Is that a big advantage if you're in second and you see the guy in front of you looking back over and over again?
Oh, definitely, especially if there's a little distance to go. If you only got a K to go, it couldn't be.
JoAnne Ritchie hanging right with Sylviane Puntous, and in fact, she is in the lead, so they go back and forth. Puntous, Ritchie, Puntous.
Yeah, I think they're playing a lot of mind games right now. Now's the battle to set up for the finish. You know, they're trying to get into the key spots. When they get to the finish line, the right person can sort of take that jump and do the sprint.
Get a great idea for the size difference there. Ritchie, much bigger, much longer strides. Now, Sylviane Puntous, to me, doesn't look that happy right now. She looks tired.
I don't think she expected to have someone with her at this point in the race.
Terri-Smith-Ross doing very well. She is by herself in third. Kendall Morrison has dropped back. But here comes Mike Pigg as he sprints the last kilometer to the finish line.
Yeah, and you can see nobody behind Mike, which, you know, he knows it's his race now. It's a downhill finish. He's just sort of going to cruise it home and, you know, look forward to seeing that crowd.
Almost like he wrote the script. He said he'd like to pull away in the bike. He has done that, and he has continued to extend his lead on the run. Mike Pigg as he sprints to the finish line at beautiful Shadow Whistler.
Mike's had a good swim, a good bike, and a good run. And when that, you put all those 3 together, it adds up to a nice victory.
He wasn't leading under the water, but you said it was good enough to put him in good position, and he's in great position now. Mike Pigg will win the Royal LePage Whistler Triathlon, and he wins it rather handily.
Yeah, I think, you know, he's very happy because he didn't have that guy pushing him, you know, so he was in that anaerobic position at the end, and he could sort of maintain the same pace the whole way.
Very smooth as he went through the finish line in a time of about 1:48. Here's the number 2 man, Brad Bevan, led out of the water by a second. I think he'll be happy with second spot.
I think he'll be very happy. Nice little payday for the man from Australia.
Brad Bevan, not as well known as some of the other Australians up here, but he looks to be the best of that team right now. Bevan places second, and here's another Aussie, as we expected, with a strong run, Greg Welch.
Yeah, we didn't see Greg a lot in the bike, and that just shows his running abilities because he just ran through the field today to get third spot.
And more so than the others, he seems hardly winded at all, Greg Welch with a third, and here's the top Canadian, Simon Cassidy. Nice job in fourth.
Simon's one of our more consistent competitors up here, and he's always up there in the top 5.
Let's take a look at the Toshiba final results. Mike Pigg wins by 30 seconds over Brad Bevan, so Bevan made up a little bit of ground. Greg Welch with a fine run places 4th, and Simon Cassidy and Frank Clark, pair of Canadians, in 4th and 5th. But the men's race, really not a race as they came to the finish, but that is quite the opposite from the women. Look at the sprint to the finish line. Sylviane Puntous glances over her shoulder and sees JoAnne Ritchie still there.
Yeah, I think what's going to be the factor here is, you know, if it's a downhill or uphill finish can determine which one of these girls is going to get to that tape first.
Well, what we saw was when they went downhill, Puntous pulled away. When they went uphill, it was Ritchie, and this is mostly downhill, and that's got to favor Sylviane Puntous.
Sylviane's got quicker leg speed, and I think that's going to carry her home, but I think she's hurting real bad right now having that girl so close to her.
She keeps looking over her shoulder, but as she looks ahead, she sees the finish line and crosses the tape, winning the Whistler Royal LePage Triathlon. An outstanding finish for Sylviane Puntous. Just look at her face. You know that she left nothing on the course. She poured out her heart.
They were both forced to give it all, and that, you can't ask for a better race than that. That's what the crowd comes to see. That's what everybody wants to see when you have a good triathlon.
Sylviane Puntous obviously exhausted at this point, but I guess that's what you want in a race to the finish. You don't want to leave anything behind you.
Well, that's what we like to see, not what they like to see. I think she'd rather have had a race like Mike Pigg if she had her choice.
Terri-Smith-Ross, on the other hand, looks rather refreshed comparatively, and she places 3rd. Nice job by Terri-Smith-Ross, and here is Kendall Morrison in 4th.
Yeah, those are the girls from Canada we'd expect to be up there in a course like this. Terry's been racing fantastic this year, and she's probably really, really happy with her race today.
Kendall Morrison with the arm around Terri-Smith-Ross. Those two would compete head-to-head on a weekly basis in the Royal LePage Triathlon Series.
That builds a lot of camaraderie. I think the nice thing about this sport is that everybody sort of congratulates each other. It's not cutthroat like maybe some other sports tend to be.
And a little smile from Kendall Morrison as she shakes the hand of 2nd place finisher JoAnne Ritchie, who still seems to be a little bit winded. Now let's take a look at the Toshiba final results for the women. Sylviane Puntous with a 2-second victory over JoAnne Ritchie. In the sprint to the finish, Terri-Smith-Ross was 3rd, Kendall Morrison 4th, and Sue Schlatter, another fine Canadian from St. Lambert, Quebec, was 5th. But now let's hear the two champions, Puntous and Ritchie, as they debate the sprint to the finish line and who pushed the hardest.
I think I win because she's a better runner. I'm not a runner. She's a runner. She gave up. I did it. She did it. The last I did it. I sprinted like the last 10 yards. Yeah. But you're already crossed.
What was that Graham said about it not being cutthroat? They might not agree on the sprint to the finish, but I think they'll agree this might have been the race of the year. The Royal LePage Whistler Triathlon, won by Sylviane Puntous.
I'm a bird man. Know what I am? I'm a bird man. I'm a bird man.
There's a lot more work to painting than just the painting. So use a paint that'll keep you from having to do it all again for a long time. Pittsburgh paints. Our paint is tested and researched, so we know it'll last and look beautiful for years. Pittsburgh paints. You work too hard to paint with anything less.
Tennis pump from Reebok. It helps you get around the battlefield with a little more confidence.
Well, we've seen it all. We've seen swimming and cycling and running in this race. We saw some skiing and now something totally different. Nothing different about this race, though. Mike Pigg, the man on the right, the American, was the winner, and he might be the best short course triathlete in the world right now. That's Greg Welch, the 3rd place finisher. As you look at the Puntous twins, Patricia on the right had a very disappointing performance. But let's hear from the top 3 men and their assessments of the race.
I had a really good swim. I let out of the water
And then I hopped on the bike after the 1K run and felt great. And then Mike took over sort of after the turnaround.
I thought I was chasing the Mike Pigg the second here. Brad had an excellent bike. Finally caught him, and he missed. I took an extra stroke, and he missed a breath, and I took off and had a good race, and I ran scared in the run.
I saw the two guys up front. They were really going fast, and I made up 40 seconds on the run, but it wasn't enough. It was a very hard run course, and I thought I'd do better, but two guys up front deserved it more than I did.
You know who did well? These three Canadians. They lead the Gatorade Run Prem for the 9K, 30:49 for Frank Clark. Top woman was Sylviane Puntous, and she basically won it on the 9K run. As for the Reebok Grand Prix standings, Frank Clark continues to lead White and Bates, and for the women, Sue Schlatter has a narrow lead over Terri-Smith-Ross. As the hot sun continues to burn, the elite athletes have been finished for more than an hour. But this is an event that's about more than just elite athletes. The age groupers might go for the next hour or so. But, Graham, let's talk about the professionals. And on the men's side, it was almost as we talked about.
Yeah, I think if you predict the top three guys in the sport that were at this race today, it would be Mike Pigg, Brad Bevan, and Greg Welch. On any given day, it's anybody's race. But, you know, I think I was really surprised, actually, that Mike, with all the hills, was able to hold on because the little Australian guys can run.
So here we are patting ourselves on the back about how we were right with the men. But the women, what an incredible surprise and finish.
Yeah, I think the women's side was the real surprise, because you got this girl from BC who hasn't raced much this year, JoAnne Ritchie, and you know she's leading the whole run until the end, and then Sylviane Puntous just catches at the end. And I think the crowd was a bit disappointed maybe that the local didn't come, but I think they're really happy that it was such a race that it was.
So a spectacular finish to a spectacular setting for a very, very good race. We hope you've enjoyed it. For Graham Fraser, I'm Michael Landsberg. So long from the Royal LePage Whistler Triathlon. Today's broadcast brought to you by Royal LePage, Canada's leading realtor and sponsors of the Royal LePage Triathlon Series. And by Reebok Canada, manufacturers of the new and innovative pump technology for athletic footwear. And by Budweiser, proud sponsors of the Ironman Qualifier Series and the Ironman Canada Triathlon Championship.